It was a drunken accident, and I ended up pregnant. I didn't have the money for an abortion, and I couldn't afford to have the baby. As the bump started to show, I knew I couldn't hide it any longer. My only option was to ask my roommate, the one with mob ties, for a loan. He was toying with a knife, his expression grim. "I can raise the bastard," he said, "but you have to tell me who the hell the father is." How was I supposed to tell him that he was the one? Ken came back with a fresh set of injuries and a box of roast duck. He tossed the duck onto the table and pulled out my chair to sit down. "Help me with my wounds first." Looking at him, he'd probably been street racing again. "You need to go to the hospital for this." "Don't need to." He pulled off his shirt without a second thought. "Just flesh wounds." I sighed, putting down my pajamas and wash basin, and pulled out the first aid kit like I always did. Just as I took out a cotton swab, Ken suddenly grabbed my wrist. "What are you?" He grinned and gave a light tug. I fell right onto his lap. Standing must be tiring. His smile was bright and defiant. Ken had scrapes on his legs too, but he didn't even flinch when I sat on them. "Whatever. It's not my leg that hurts." After I finished cleaning his wounds, I struggled to get up and put away the kit. He didn't force me to stay this time, getting up to rummage through my desk for a bowl and chopsticks. Ken had a thing about only eating food that was served on proper dinnerware. No matter how expensive or fancy the takeout container, to him it was just for transport. People who eat out of containers are just surviving, not living. A statement that perfectly matched his status as the heir to the Ken family fortune. But that didn't stop him from paying extra for the best takeout boxes every time. I can't tell you how many times I've silently screamed, "Just give me the money. I'd happily carry the plate all the way back for you." I was barely surviving as it was. "What's this?" I turned my head at the sound of his voice and saw Ken holding a test strip. 2 bright red lines. My heart skipped a beat. Crap, I forgot to throw it away. My body moved before my brain could catch up. I snatched it from his hand and tossed it in the trash. "It's a flu test." "Oh?" He raised an eyebrow. "Doesn't look like one. This is what all the test kits look like now. So you should probably keep your distance. It's contagious." Ken scoffed, grabbing the back of my neck and pulling me closer. Our noses touched, our breaths mingling. "You think I'm scared of that?" He tilted his head, leaning in slowly. I turned away, and his lips just barely brushed past my ear. Ken froze. "You don't want to?" "No. It's not like we haven't kissed before. That was a misunderstanding. 3 months ago, the night Ken first moved in, he got up to use the bathroom and sleepily climbed into my bed by mistake. I woke up and tried to tell him he was in the wrong bed, but he just held me down and kissed me for half an hour. Afterward, he explained that he wasn't used to the new place and thought he was still at home, and that the person in his bed was his ex. I accepted his explanation. "But you didn't reject me that time in the bathroom either." "That time was my fault. I got shampoo in my eyes while washing my hair and couldn't see a thing. I stumbled around looking for a towel and ended up falling into Ken. We just happened to kiss and then we just went with it." Ken didn't have the patience to argue with me. He grabbed my chin, forcing me to look him in the eye. "Fine. Let's have another accident, then." This time, it was very much not an accident. I gagged. Ken froze, his face a picture of disbelief. "You think I'm disgusting?" "Of course not." I wanted to deny it, but then I gagged again. The atmosphere grew tense. It was just an involuntary physical reaction. I couldn't control it. It meant nothing. But Ken clearly didn't see it that way. He let go of me and took 2 steps back. I tried to salvage the situation. "Sorry, maybe you should find someone else." For some reason, that just fanned the flames in his eyes. He let out a cold laugh, gritted his teeth, grabbed his shirt, and stormed out. I was afraid he'd go back to that life or death street racing, so I couldn't help but call out, "You're still injured." The only response I got was the sound of the door slamming shut. I stood there for a long time before slowly sitting down and tying up the trash bag with the pregnancy test in it. Ken didn't know that besides those misunderstandings and accidents, we had one other incident. An incident that left me with a life inside of me that shouldn't exist. Well, it wasn't a person yet, so let's just call it a thing. How can a guy get pregnant? That's what I asked the doctor. He explained that my body's anatomy was special. To help me understand, he even pulled up similar cases and drew diagrams. But I didn't hear a single word. My world had just collapsed. My mind was just a loud buzzing sound, and all I could see was the doctor's mouth opening and closing. Finally, the doctor said I was too early for an abortion. I'd have to wait at least another 2 weeks. I was too embarrassed to tell him that after paying for his specialist consultation and the tests, I was completely broke. I just sent my entire internship paycheck home, and I knew there was no way I was getting that money back. At least I had 2 weeks to save up. And at least Ken had left me the roast duck, so I wouldn't go hungry tonight. I was sure he wouldn't be back tonight, but after some hesitation, I still saved half for him. Ken had mentioned before that the restaurant used young ducklings, which is why the meat was so tender and juicy, the skin perfectly crisp and topped with caviar. I tried to resist, but I couldn't, and picked up another piece. Just as I popped it in my mouth, the door suddenly opened, and I almost choked to death. Ken was holding a big plastic bag, his expression just as sour as when he'd left. He glanced at the remaining duck and said with a sarcastic sting, "So you think I'm disgusting, but the duck is fine?" I forced the food down, caught my breath, and explained in a hoarse voice, "I really don't think you're disgusting. I just wasn't feeling well earlier." Ken's expression finally softened a bit. "Come take your medicine." So he went out to buy medicine. "I thought you weren't coming back. Where else would I go? Your own home." Ken's eyes darkened, a flash of coldness in them. "Had a falling out." I was a little surprised. "Another one?" Ken and I were assigned to the same dorm room freshman year, but he didn't actually move in until the second semester of our senior year. As a rich kid from a family with mob ties, he wouldn't even consider the school's single rooms, let alone a double. He didn't move in because he suddenly liked it. It was because he'd fought with his family. His hard-nosed dad had cut off his cards and confiscated his properties, leaving him with no choice but to move in out of spite. All his usual friends were too scared of his family's power to help him out. As an outsider who'd never really interacted with him, I was free to help. I'd squeeze a little money from my meager internship pay, secretly use forbidden appliances, and cook different meals for him every day. We lived like this for a long time, supporting each other, until his butler couldn't stand it anymore and secretly funded him. By last month, his relationship with his family had mostly recovered. They even threw him a huge birthday party, and Ken invited me. The accident happened that day. Ken, not in his right mind, ended up in bed with me, and we were tangled up all night. It's been less than a month, and they've already had another falling out. Seeing that he didn't want to talk about it, I didn't press him. Ken had bought a pile of antibiotics. I had a reasonable suspicion that taking all of these would make a healthy person sick. I instinctively covered my stomach. Noticing Ken's gaze drop to my hands, I quickly moved them away. "I already took my medicine tonight." "You did? What did you take?" Confident he wouldn't know any better, I made up some names. Taking more might cause a bad reaction. Ken stared at me for a long moment, then gave a slight nod. I thought he'd given in, but then he said something shocking. "Leo, I'm gonna touch you now." "Huh?" Before I could make a sound, the back of his hand was on my forehead. A cool sensation seeped into my pores, into my blood. "Your temperature seems a little higher than mine." Ken pulled his hand back. "If it doesn't go down, you're gonna take the medicine I got you." The feeling of his touch lingered on my forehead, and I was still a bit dazed. 2 gags were enough to make this wild, unrestrained guy so cautious and restrained. However, that feeling didn't last the night. When he got up to use the bathroom, he pulled the same trick and crawled into my bed. The kiss I had avoided earlier finally found its mark. "Leo, do you really not know how I feel about you?" I pretended to be asleep, not even a flicker of my eyelashes. Ken's gaze lingered on my face for a long time before he bit my earlobe in frustration. "I really want to fuck you." I lay there motionless for a long time. Only when I heard the steady breathing next to me did I slowly open my eyes. If I had heard those words before that night, I probably would have been happy. After all, there were so many times I could have pushed him away, but I never did. Not only did I not push him away, I kind of enjoyed it. In the 3 months we'd lived together, I had already fallen for him. His strength and confidence, his bold and unrestrained nature, his subtle advances, the flirtatious pull of being more than friends but not yet lovers, it was all fatally attractive to me. Like a rat in the gutter of a Parisian street, dreaming of a freshly baked croissant from the pâtisserie. Like a lone boat in the vast ocean, unable to resist the pull of a massive, glittering ship, unconsciously drawing closer. But when I woke up in Ken's arms that day, just as I was naively thinking we had a beginning, a conversation between his father and his butler pronounced our end. His father instructed the butler that the arranged marriage partner, who had missed Ken's birthday party due to a delayed flight, had just arrived on an early morning plane. She was to be treated with the utmost care. I'd gotten so used to living like Ken's ordinary roommate that I had forgotten. Rats are meant to stay in the shadows. The massive ship sails on in a trail of light, heading for its predetermined destination. And the little wrecked boat, after their brief encounter, will simply sink without a sound. It was still over 2 weeks until my next internship paycheck. To save up money faster, I got another part-time job. A convenience store near campus, $18 an hour, with an extra $1.50 for the night shift. The labor was dirt cheap, but the only perk was that I could take home the expired and written-off rice balls and bento boxes before my shift ended. This made my schedule incredibly tight. I worked my regular office job during the weekdays, then went straight to the convenience store. After my shift, I'd go back to the dorm to work on my thesis until the early hours, getting only 4 hours of sleep before having to wake up again. The dorm mom was really nice. She knew my night shift ended half an hour after curfew and would often leave the door unlocked for me. "It'll get better once you graduate and get a full-time job," she'd comfort me. "The tough times will pass." I thought so too. Just hang in there a little longer, and then life threw a sucker punch. When my HR manager heard I was planning to rent an apartment near the company after graduation, she hesitated for a long time before gently telling me the truth. "The company isn't doing well this year, so we don't have any headcount for new hires, so there was no way I was getting a full-time offer. Once I graduated, I'd be out on my ass. Now you know. You should start making other plans," she said. I was grateful she told me in advance. At least I hadn't missed the tail end of the spring hiring rush. But now I had to split my focus between campus job fairs and running to interviews. Some people look calm on the surface, but on the inside, they've been dead for a while. I kept going to work as usual, smiling and telling my colleagues "see you tomorrow" after my shift, then squeezing onto the crowded evening subway with a numb expression, a faint aura of death surrounding me. Today must have been a Mercury in retrograde kind of day. While wiping the shelves, my hand slipped and I knocked over 2 bottles of fruit wine. A whole day's work, gone just like that. After sweeping up the broken glass, I stood there staring at the trash can. The pressure was immense. I wish someone would drug Ken again, just like last time. Just pretend I don't see the huge gap between us. Pretend I don't know he has an arranged marriage. My phone vibrated, snapping me out of my unrealistic fantasy. I opened it. It was Ken. "Why aren't you in the dorm? The medicine is still unopened. You didn't take it?" The morning after he brought the roast duck, he went to the balcony to take a call. He was on the phone for a long time, and when he came back, he had the chill of the early spring dew on him. He had to fly to Italy to deal with some mess his grandfather had left behind. "I might die over there. Are you still going to pretend to be asleep?" I kept my eyes squeezed shut, wrestling with what to do. By the time I decided to respond, he had already turned and gotten out of bed. An entire week with no news. I was relieved. Finally, something good happened. Working overtime. What kind of intern has to work overtime? 2 seconds later, a new message popped up. "Send me your location. I'll pick you up. I'm with some friends, you should meet them." The ivory tower of college was the last veil hiding our class differences. After graduation, the gap between the clouds and the mud would only become more obvious. Join his social circle? Completely unnecessary. After all, I wouldn't have anything to do with Ken himself anymore either. No need. Gotta go, I'm busy. After sending that, I put my phone back in my pocket and went back into the convenience store to earn my remaining 18. Just before my shift ended, as I was finishing up the daily sales count, the automatic doors slid open with a ding. A noisy group of guys and girls flooded in, and I froze. Even with all the noise, I immediately recognized Ken's voice. "Don't mess around," he said. He was talking to a handsome guy with delicate features. My scalp tingled. The desire to run was overwhelming, but it was too late. After he spoke, he turned his head and our eyes met. The faint smile on his lips froze, and his face slowly darkened. "This is what you call working overtime?" His presence was so powerful that the area around us fell silent. Everyone's eyes were on me, shamelessly sizing me up. It was uncomfortable. I took off my uniform and nodded to the coworker taking over my shift. "I'm heading out." But I couldn't leave. I had to write a report for the 2 broken bottles of wine. Thankfully, the group's attention quickly shifted to other things, and the feeling of being stared at eased up a bit. Except for Ken, who stood stubbornly at the counter, demanding an explanation for my lie. What explanation could there be? I was broke. I considered making up an excuse and asking Ken for a loan to get through this, but while money can be repaid, favors can't. I didn't want to get any more entangled with him. After a standoff, he was the first to give in. "Is your flu better?" "Yeah." "You didn't give it to me." "Well, you must have a great immune system." Ken was about to say something else when a short scream interrupted him. He flinched for a second, his expression stiffening, then immediately ran towards the sound. I followed and saw it was the handsome guy. He had somehow fallen in the corner, and a shelf had cut his ankle. I turned to my coworker. "Did you just mop the floor?" She quickly waved her hands. "I haven't had a chance to yet." There was no time to figure out why he fell. We had to treat his wound first. "I'll go get the first aid kit." Ken looked furious. He pushed everyone aside, bent down and picked the guy up. The group immediately started hooting and hollering. In the small space of the convenience store, it was deafening. "Ken, I hate your school," the guy whined, resting his head on Ken's shoulder and shooting me a look I could never pull off. Ken's tone was flat. "I told you not to come." He didn't seem to hear what I said and strode towards the exit. A wound that small could have been handled with the store's first aid kit, but I guess he was worried. A hand held tightly around his waist, a non-resistant embrace, a look of pure concern, an undeniable intimacy. He must be someone important. Ken paused as he passed me, lowering his voice. "Leave the door unlocked for me tonight." I didn't answer. I stepped aside and let them leave. The spot where the guy fell was a blind spot for the security camera. I replayed the footage over and over but couldn't figure out how he'd fallen. I didn't know if I'd be held responsible, so I saved the footage just in case. Leaving the convenience store, I was exhausted. Ken's car was parked in front of the dorm. He was leaning against the door, a red ember glowing at his fingertips. I'd never seen him smoke before. He must be in a terrible mood. Was he going to demand justice for that guy? For a cut that would have healed on its own without any treatment? I pinched the bridge of my nose and walked up to him. "Ken, I'll take responsibility for what happened during my shift." Later, Ken suddenly let out a cold laugh. The rest of my words got stuck in my throat. I didn't understand what that laugh meant. He looked up, the ferocity in his face still startlingly clear in the dim light. "Oh, so now you'll take responsibility." I was always going to. A small white rectangle hit me in the face with a slap before falling to the ground. I knew what it was with a single glance. It seemed Ken had taken the guy to the 24-hour pharmacy down the street from the school. The same place I bought my pregnancy test. Maybe because I was just so tired today, I couldn't muster the energy to panic. I closed my eyes and bent down to pick it up. The back of my neck was suddenly grabbed. Hard. I couldn't help but let out a muffled grunt, forced into an uncomfortable position facing Ken. His dark eyes were churning with a burning rage. "Leo, who the fuck did you knock up?" I didn't say anything. He gritted his teeth and tightened his grip. "And you lied to me, said it was the flu. I never knew you were such a good actor. Say something. All you know is how to get off, but you don't know how to use protection." Can't even afford a fucking condom? I looked at him silently and said nothing. He paused, then started to sneer. Oh, I get it now. Working late at a convenience store because you really can't afford it. Leo, you'll be fucking poor for the rest of your life. His words really hurt, but they were also true. This was my life. Ken let me go, slammed the car door shut, and sped off without another glance. The dorm mom was woken up by the noise. Her annoyance turned to concern when she saw me. Hey, you have to take care of yourself, you know? Don't push yourself too hard. You've got your whole life ahead of you. I picked up the pregnancy test, stuck it in my pocket, and apologized to her sincerely. I was so tired I practically crawled up the 4 flights of stairs. When I opened the door to our room, the sweet, cloying smell of candy hit me. Even when Ken was away on business, he still thought to bring me back a souvenir. I sat down at my desk and stared at the table full of treats for a while. Finally, I picked up the cheapest-looking chocolate bar. I slowly tore open the wrapper and put a piece in my mouth. So bitter. If happiness is chocolate, I must be a dog. Ken never came back. A guy like him never had to worry about survival. If the Ken family hadn't been in a bit of a crisis back then, forcing him to lay low, he never would have come to this ordinary university. And he never would have met me. I was still incredibly busy, too busy to think about anything else. 2 weeks flew by, and I finally got a good job offer at the tail end of the hiring season. When I finished my exit paperwork at my old company, the HR manager breathed a sigh of relief. Good thing we didn't hold you back. I asked, can I get my final paycheck early then? She blinked. Sorry, can't do that. It was fine. I had already saved up enough for the abortion anyway. My thesis was pretty much done, just waiting for the defense. I had some time before starting my new job, so I could finally relax a little. The guy who fell never came looking for trouble either. Everything was good. So good. On the way back to campus, I scheduled a doctor's appointment for next week. Seeing the confirmation message, the constant tension in my nerves finally started to ease. Even though there was a bump in the road that threw me off course, I managed to get back on track without any major issues. Before heading back to the dorm, I stopped to buy some milk and fruit to thank the dorm mom for looking out for me these past few months. With graduation just around the corner, the dorm building was half empty. You could see people moving out with bags and boxes all the time. It would all be over soon. 4 years of going nowhere, and 3 months that felt like a dream. So good, so good. I was practically skipping up the stairs when my phone rang. Staring at the word home flashing on the screen, all my happiness instantly froze. A voice in my head was screaming, "Don't answer it. Don't answer it, Leo." My fingers trembled uncontrollably. I tried to hit decline, but my hand shook, and the phone fell to the floor, accidentally answering the call. A man's voice immediately shot out. "Are you deaf? What took you so long?" My joints stiffened. I slowly crouched down, my mind numb. What's wrong? I already knew the answer, but I didn't want to lose all hope just yet. What if it was something else? What if he'd had a change of heart? Send me some money. Of course. It was never going to be anything else. I picked up my phone and clenched it in my fist. For the first time, I didn't want to give in. I just sent you money. I don't have any right now. If you don't have money, then figure it out. I can't. He was silent for a moment, then sneered. Fine. I'll just go to your sister. My eyes widened. She's in middle school, where would she get money? The man laughed, his voice like a demon's. Every word pounded on my eardrums, echoing in my heart. He said, she is the money. My breathing became ragged. My vision went black, and I couldn't stop the urge to gag. Don't. I heard my own voice, sounding very far away. I'll send it. 631. Every last cent. Staring at my empty bank account, a thought popped into my head. Maybe I shouldn't get the abortion. Maybe I should just carry it to term, give birth secretly in a public restroom like you see in the news, and throw it away. Toss it in a gutter where no one can see, and press the flush button. The thought terrified me. How would that make me any different from my biological parents? I was abandoned in a patch of reeds by a river right after I was born. An old bachelor from the village found me. Besides me, he also found 2 older sisters and a younger sister. Sounds like a heartwarming story, but only we knew what a vicious, cruel bastard he really was. He used us abandoned kids to get monthly government subsidies. Then he'd go and gamble it all away. He married my oldest sister off as soon as she was old enough. My second sister disappeared the day after he lost big and the debt collectors came after him. I lied and told him I was going out of town to work, but I used student loans to go to college. I thought I could slowly escape his grasp, but today I realized I can never get away. I lay in the dorm for 2 days, and the world was completely silent. Just when I thought I might just sleep forever, my phone suddenly rang. I reflexively pulled the covers over my head, my body trembling with fear. Thankfully, it rang for a minute and then stopped. Before I could recover from my panic, it started ringing again. After this happened twice more, I slowly peeked out. That persistent, it couldn't be a call from home. Just as I grabbed the phone, the caller hung up again. It was Ken. I stared at the screen, stunned. What else could he want? It should have been over between us a long time ago. As I was spacing out, the phone rang again. This time I answered. There was silence on the other end, just the sound of unsteady breathing, tinged with restrained anger. Why did it take you so long to answer? I was sleeping. Did you move out? I got a text about the dorm's overdue electricity bill. No wonder the lights haven't been working for the past 2 days. I thought the bulb was just burnt out. When I didn't answer, he got even angrier. Did you move in with that woman? There didn't seem to be any point in denying it. Let him think what he wanted. My silence was met with a long pause from him. So long I thought he'd hung up. I glanced at the screen. It was still on. Leo, what the hell am I to you? The screen went black. No one hung up. My phone had died. I lay there for a little while longer, until the light above me suddenly turned on. My eyes weren't used to the light. I squeezed them shut, they felt sore and swollen. I forced myself to stare at the light source, then crawled out of bed. No, I can't die in the dorm. It would be a hassle for the dorm mom. I got out of bed, plugged in my phone, and turned it on. 0 unread messages. Looks like Ken paying the electricity bill was his final act of kindness. He didn't even come to the graduation ceremony. He had very few things in the dorm room, but they were all expensive. I had no idea what he planned to do with them. I quietly packed my own things and took the trash downstairs. 2 classmates were leaving with their suitcases. They saw me and waved. For the past 4 years, all my time outside of class was spent working various part-time jobs. I could count the number of classmates I knew by name on one hand. But even classmates I barely knew would say goodbye at the end. I noticed their eyes linger on my stomach for a moment, and I awkwardly tugged at my shirt. It was happening so fast. It was already visibly noticeable. The internship money I got later all went to rent, and once again I had no extra cash to deal with this. This life, I guess it was now. I stood there for a moment trying to process my anxiety. Just as I was about to turn and go back, someone called out to me. Hey, can I have a few minutes of your time? I stopped and looked at him suspiciously. Black shirt, gelled hair, strong cologne. He looked like he'd been lurking around here for a while. I instinctively took a step back, but he just smiled and moved closer. Have you found a job yet? If not, I've got a really easy gig for you. A recruiter? Hanging around the dorms at night looking for employees? I became wary and shook my head repeatedly. No thanks, I already have a job. The man blocked my path. Could be a side hustle. Just a little time at night, pays way better than your regular job. Look at you, you're so good looking. It'd be a shame not to use it. I got it. Not a legit job. Thanks, but I'm not interested. Just as I was about to walk away, he grabbed my wrist. Hey, just hear me out. My car's right over there. I can take you to see the place. If you're still not interested, I'll bring you right back. Let go of me. He was surprisingly strong. Couldn't break free. Just as I was about to reach for my phone, a fist flew past my ear. The muffled thud of flesh hitting flesh exploded in front of me. The man was knocked sideways. He dropped the act and lunged forward with a ferocious expression. But his face froze into terror the moment he saw the person standing next to me. K. Ken slammed the man to the ground, his voice ice cold. What crew are you with? Boss. It's a misunderstanding. Really? 3. I really didn't know he was with you. It was just a coincidence. 2. Boss, I'm sorry. Please let me go this time. Ken looked disappointed as he applied more pressure. The man on the ground started to wail, finally managing to choke out 2 words. Ken froze at the words, and the man took the opportunity to break free and scramble away. Ken had changed since I last saw him. The flashy arrogance had settled, but the ferocity was sharper than ever. I tried to walk around him. I'll just go to my rental tonight. He can't just force his way in. Where are you going? Unsurprisingly, he blocked my way. Home. Home? His voice rose with a strange inflection before dropping abruptly. With that woman? He spun me around by my shoulders and pulled me into an unyielding embrace, leading me towards the dorm. What are you doing? I'm not going back to the dorm. I had a bad feeling that something was going to happen if I went back. Ken held me tighter. Is the first aid kit still there? Huh? I'm hurt. We ended up going upstairs after all. The so-called wound was just a scrape on his knuckles from punching that guy. I applied ointment for him, and he sucked in a breath from the pain. His previous injuries were much worse, and I'd never heard him make a sound. Did my technique change? Does it hurt that much? Even if I endure it, it's not like you'd care. Combined with what just happened, I suspected he was acting. You hired that guy to act with you, didn't you? No. A chill came over his face. I don't know what his motive was, but I will get you an explanation. He changed the subject, taking my hand. To be safe, you should stay with me for now. I needed to leave. Now. I quickly pulled my hand away, packed up the first aid kit, and grabbed my luggage from under the desk. Ken just watched me the whole time without saying a word. This was not normal. Just as I reached the door, I was suddenly lifted off my feet. The next thing I knew, he had hoisted me onto the desk. Something was definitely up. Ken, don't do anything stupid. Ken ignored me, using his strength to push his way between my legs, pressing down on me like a mountain. Let me the fuck go. In your dreams. You bastard. That I am. He buried his head in my neck and took a deep breath. Leo, I've missed you so much. My heart clenched, a wave of bittersweet emotion spreading through me. I still couldn't resist the pull of the croissant, the massive ship. I found myself hugging him back, then quickly let go as I realized what I was doing. Ken's body tensed. He jerked his head up to look at me, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. Leo, there are no misunderstandings or coincidences in this world. You like me too, don't you? That thing with her was just an accident. You had to take responsibility, right? I forced myself to look away. No. He clearly didn't believe me. I can compensate her. I'll give her anything she wants except for you. Leo, stay. Stay by my side. But there's already someone by your side. Standing there, I'm just an extra and a moral presence. Being Ken's mistress is no different from going with that man to a nightclub. Against the light, I couldn't see his expression. His rough palm caressed my cheek, hurting just a little. But mixed with the pain was an indescribable pleasure. It was hard not to remember that chaotic night, how these hands had roamed all over my body. I tried to suppress the gasp rising in my throat, but when I spoke, my voice was shaky. MMMPH. The rest of my words were swallowed. Ken's kiss was domineering, stealing all the oxygen from my lungs. My head started to spin. In a blur, I felt my shirt being unbuttoned. One by one, his hands slipped inside, kneading my chest without mercy. When he touched my stomach, I jolted awake. Ken stopped too, breathing heavily, and looked down at the slight curve under his palm. Slim arms and legs, but your stomach. I frantically pushed him away, my hands trembling as I buttoned up my shirt. Ken, who had been pushed away, wasn't angry. His face showed just as much panic and nervousness as mine. Leo, are you sick? No, I just ate too much and got fat. I should go now. He held me down with one hand, and with the other, he lifted my shirt and touched my stomach again. It was a light touch, but it trembled slightly. Leo, we're going to the hospital. I was about to refuse, But Ken cut me off. We're going to the hospital. His tone was absolute. I knew I couldn't avoid it anymore. He straightened my clothes for me and turned to get his car keys. I watched his back and closed my eyes. Ken, whatever you say now, it doesn't matter. We have to. I'm pregnant. The keys clattered to the floor. What did you say? At the Ken family's private hospital, I finally understood why my biological parents abandoned me. A congenital chromosomal abnormality. An extra one in the 23rd pair. As a result, I had a second set of female organs inside my body. I was a freak. We didn't detect it before because the internal sex organs hadn't developed. Now, due to external stimulation and hormonal changes, they have become fully functional. There are two options: surgery to remove them and you continue to live as a male, or conservative treatment with hormones to keep the baby. The answer was obvious. It had to be. A sharp pain suddenly shot through my heart. I hesitated. Ken had been chain smoking at the end of the hallway. When he came into the room, he leaned against the wall without a word. After a long while, he sat down on the edge of the bed, picked up the small knife from the nightstand, and slowly began to peel an apple. The doctors here are top-notch. The surgery isn't high risk, so don't worry too much. I didn't say anything. I cautiously studied his expression and mumbled, Ken, can I borrow some money? The apple peel suddenly snapped. Ken looked at me, his expression unchanged, but the veins on the back of his hand bulged. You don't need to. You won't have to pay for anything, including the post-op recovery. He had made his intentions crystal clear. But I want to keep. Leo. Ken's voice suddenly shot up. Get a grip. That's a rapist's baby. My chest tightened. I clutched the blanket and whispered, No, it's not. The room fell silent. The anger on his face slowly morphed into disbelief. He asked, his voice trembling, You were willing? He was the one asking. But he was also the one who suddenly clamped a hand over my mouth when I tried to speak. Unable to talk, I just nodded. Ken let go of me. A long time passed. Who? Huh? I'll give you the money. I'll raise the bastard. But I have to know who the damn man is. I glanced up at the furious Ken and pressed my lips together. If he found out the truth, the Ken family would definitely get rid of the parent to keep the child. I didn't want that. It's hard to describe this strange feeling. In my short 20-something years of life, family, love, and money were never mine. But now there was a life that truly belonged to me. Based on the timeline, we were together every day that month. Except for my birthday when I blacked out. The butler said you went home with someone that night, but I can't find any record of whose car you got into. Leo, who did you hook up with? Do you have any idea what kind of people were at that party? They eat people alive. Why the hell would you get involved with someone like that? I slowly burrowed back under the covers. Ken, there's no future for me and that person. It's okay if you won't lend me the money. I'll figure it out myself. Ken gave in. The condition was that I had to live at his place. I disagreed. Forget it. The apartment I'm renting is fine, and I'm about to start my new job, so I'll have a paycheck soon. Even though half of it would go to student loans and the other half would be snatched by that old bachelor. Ken compromised again. I'll buy an apartment near your company. Just the two of us. What was this, being kept in a gilded cage? Seeing me still shaking my head, Ken's face darkened. Leo, have you forgotten who I am? If I wanted to force you, I have 1,000 ways to get you on that operating table. He was right. In the end, we agreed that I would continue to live in my rental, but he would also have a key and could come over whenever he wanted, and I couldn't stop him. I also had to stay at his house at least once a week. At least I had control most of the time, so I wouldn't be too passive. The day after I agreed, Ken transferred a large sum of money into my account with the note voluntary gift. I messaged him. It was a loan. Why did you write gift? He replied after a while. This month's appeasement fund for the bastard. Let it see its stepdad's got means so it doesn't bother you. My heart felt a little sour. If only he didn't have an arranged marriage. I can't imagine how happy I would be. A little while later, he transferred another sum. You don't have to pay back the principal, but I'm charging interest. I pulled out a calculator and did the math. Great, now he was coming for my salary. But that night, the moment Ken walked in, he pushed me against the wall in the entryway and kissed me until my whole body went weak. That's when I realized what the interest was. I was too weak to stand, and he scooped me up and carried me to the bedroom. Luckily, given my condition, he couldn't do much more than get my face wet, so he couldn't take the next step. After fooling around until late, I went to the kitchen to make a late-night snack. In the dead of night, the only sound was the bubbling of the pot. I stared at the blue flame, lost in thought. These days would have to end eventually. When they do, where will I go? Feeling anxious, I opened my bank app to look at my balance, and I instantly felt calmer. I figured it out. Since I couldn't change the situation for now, I might as well enjoy it. If you don't look out for yourself, who will? When he gets married, I'll take the money and the baby and run. Ken hugged me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder and nuzzling me. Babe, I'm hungry. Get the bowls. I had found the bowls on a campus secondhand forum the day Ken moved in. They were only $2. Perfect pair. I never would have thought back then that we would develop these strange feelings for each other in the midst of such a simple day-to-day life. After Ken finished his noodles, he started on me again. I was so tired I could die. Don't you ever get tired of this? Never. He lifted his head from my neck and pressed against me. It's just a little frustrating. I sighed and crossed my legs. Be gentle. The week flew by. After my hospital appointment, Ken drove me to his home. My bed is huge, Ken said suddenly as he turned the steering wheel. I know. We could roll around all night and still find a dry spot. He glanced over at me. You know, I was really good at shameless lying. I saw it in a dream. What kind of dream has my bed in it? Was I in it too? Yes. The car drove smoothly into the gated community. I'm not guessing. I'll just make the dream come true in a bit. The moment I walked in and saw the guy sitting on the sofa, I knew that dream wasn't coming true anytime soon. He smiled and stood up. Ken, you're back. I've been waiting for you. His expression faltered slightly when he saw me. And this is, oh, the convenience store worker. That familiar, subtle hostility. I think I knew who he was. Ken's fiancé. I really wanted to run. I forced myself to nod at him and subtly put some distance between us. Just as Ken was about to speak, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned slightly. Leo, go wait for me in my room. I have to take care of something. I'll be right back. Was it really appropriate to say that in front of his actual fiancé? Not appropriate, Ken. Of course, I didn't go to his room. I sat down rigidly on the sofa. The moment Ken left, the guy's smile vanished. He leisurely picked up his teacup and glanced at me sideways. Ken and I have known each other since we were born. We were supposed to get engaged this fall. Did you know that? I was mortified, my knees pressed tightly together, my hands not knowing where to go. I'm sorry. I'll leave him as soon as I can. He looked surprised at my words, but his disdainful expression quickly returned. Leave? You think you can bear to leave? I lowered my head. To be honest, it's Ken who won't let me go right now. The guy put down his teacup and finally deigned to look at me properly, sizing me up for a long moment. A faint hint of joy flickered in his eyes. Oh, so you want to leave? Yes. You really don't like Ken? It doesn't matter. He held out his phone to me. Julian. Add me. I'll help you. I was surprised. Help me? Why the sudden change of heart? Yes, help you get away from him. I added him, skeptical, and saved his name. The Ken family is powerful, but there are places their reach doesn't extend. I can send you away. Once things settle down here, I can bring you back. For some reason, that sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. Where would I go? Julian's eyes curved into a smile, but his gaze was deep and dark. Somewhere he can't find you and has no control over. I still felt it was strange. Why would you help me? Well, of course, to help myself, silly. Ken came back not long after, his face grim and cold. Where'd he go? I was startled by him. He left. Ken reached out and touched my face, his expression softening slightly. I have to go out. You go to sleep first. My gut told me he was going to find Julian. I felt a strange knot in my stomach. I didn't want him to go. Whoa, how could I even think that? Was I growing a lovesick brain? Or was it the hormones? Either way, it was terrifying. I was slowly turning into the person I despised. If this continued, one day I'd willingly become one of Ken's kept lovers, doing nothing all day but waiting for him to visit. Absolutely not. Ken didn't come back all night. I stared at the ceiling in his huge bed all night. At dawn, I decided to go back to my own place. I ran into the butler on my way out. He gave me a slight nod. I felt a little embarrassed. I'm sorry. After all, last time he'd helped me cover my tracks and get back to school, and I'd promised not to get entangled with Ken again. He shook his head. It was the young master's own choice. Ken's choice was to placate me, then spend the entire night with his actual fiancée. I was tired, so tired. I went home and slept until noon. When I opened my eyes, I saw Ken's sleeping face, and my brain was too sluggish to process it. When did he get back? He had wrapped his arms and legs around me, and I hadn't even woken up. I held my breath and tried to inch away, but just as I was about to escape, he pulled me tight, and all my effort was wasted. I couldn't tell if he was asleep or awake, but either way, he always managed to find me for a messy, sleepy kiss. I remembered the first time, how he'd sleepily mistaken me for his ex. "I want to get married," he mumbled. Was he talking in his sleep? The wave of passion that had just started to build suddenly receded. It was already noon. His dreams were just daydreams. Okay, go get married then. Ken's eyes snapped open, perfectly clear. A small smile played on his lips. He took my hand and kissed my fingertips. "Just wait a little longer." "Not yet." "Wait until when?" "Early fall? Reeds bloom in the summer, and after the fall, they wither and die." Ken must have been exhausted last night because he slept until the afternoon. I had just finished replying to an email when I turned and saw him, still looking sleepy. "Dinner?" "Yeah, I'm starving." I don't know how many copies of the key I gave Ken were made. The chef, the organizer, the nutritionist, they all had one. They moved like secret agents, coming and going without a sound. They'd do their work silently and then disappear. Ken's table manners were the complete opposite of his personality, very refined. He chewed slowly and then casually said, "Why did you turn down the job?" A slice of lotus root slipped from my chopsticks. I tried again and it slipped again. Ken smoothly picked it up and placed it in my bowl. I buried my head and chewed. "You saw that?" "Yeah." I just suddenly realized I didn't like it. "I'll find something else later. Don't bother looking." "You think I can't support you?" I know. I'll just lie back and let you." I answered cheerfully, looking up with a smile, only to see Ken frown slightly. "So you were just saying that?" "Of course not." He stared at me, his face calm, his eyes a bottomless dark pool. "I'm just afraid you're the one who's just saying it." I shoveled a mouthful of rice, stuffing my cheeks. Mimicking his tone, I mumbled, "Of course not." After dinner, the cleaner appeared out of nowhere, efficiently washed the dishes, and then vanished again. Amazing. I was in awe. If his subordinates were this capable, Ken must be even more impressive. The man who would one day be the head of the Ken family. How could he not be? But it must be tough. On the principle of leaving no regrets, I gathered my courage and asked, "Ken, what is it you like about me? After all, we're not from the same world." "You're not from Earth?" "That's not what I mean. It's just, we're not in the same circle, the same class. Remember that outdoor ed class? Those idiots wasted all the good resources to make a bunch of pig slop and were so proud of themselves. You think I'm in the same circle as them?" He was talking about something from freshman year. In the end, I was the one who salvaged the mess using what we had on hand. Ken was a ghost at school for all 4 years. That was one of the few times we interacted. I was surprised he still remembered. "I like how down to earth you are." I didn't agree. "I'm just trying to survive." Ken pulled me into a hug, his voice warm. "Those 3 months with you were the most peaceful time of my life." Suddenly, I remembered so many things. The countless new and old scars on his body, the casual way he said, "I might die there." Maybe we were both just trying to survive. But don't worry, there won't be any more dangerous situations like that. The old man was so angry before because I was secretly getting rid of some of our gray market businesses. Then why did you have a falling out twice? Oh, the second time was because of Julian. We had an arranged marriage set up by the older generation. I was kidnapped when I was little, and Julian's grandfather took a bullet for me. The last time I flew, I suddenly didn't want to hear anymore. I couldn't tell if it was because I didn't want to hear about his past with Julian, or if I didn't want to hear him tear open his own old wounds. I cut him off. Ken, didn't the doctor say that after 3 months we could, you know? He stopped abruptly, then chuckled and patted my head. Don't try to seduce me. Why not? The doctor said it's okay, right? He slowly lost his smile. Are you serious? Of course. Ken's Adam's apple bobbed. His eyes darkened inch by inch. His gaze fell to my stomach, and he shook his head again. I'm not an animal. I lowered my head, my face flushing. But I am. My back was already sore from my growing belly, and now it felt like it was about to break. Before, Ken had dismissed the people he had stationed around my apartment. Now, in the dead of night, there wasn't a soul in sight. I had a reasonable suspicion that the other tenants in this building were long gone. I tightened my jacket and slipped downstairs under the cover of darkness. The black car was parked at the intersection, just as I expected. I slowly walked towards it, towards the new future I had chosen for myself. As soon as I opened the door, a thick wave of cologne hit me. Something in my brain snapped. I slowly looked up and saw a familiar face. The man in the black shirt who had grabbed me outside the dorm. My head felt like it was about to explode. I instinctively turned to run, but I was yanked into the car. The car door slammed shut, and my heart sank with it. It was over. Julian, in the passenger seat, turned around. He had several fresh cuts on his face, and his smile was chilling in the moonlight. I tried to stay calm and reached for the door handle. I've changed my mind. Let me out. Of course, the door wouldn't open. I don't know what happened, but Julian looked almost deranged, a suffocating sense of danger radiating from him. Leo, right? Let's go to hell together. Who wants to go to hell with you? I frantically fumbled for my phone. The moment I touched it, the man in the black shirt snatched it and stabbed a knife straight through it. The blood drained from my body. Julian, I already decided to leave. Why can't you just let me go? He sneered. I let you go? Who's going to let me go? I've been through hell and back with Ken for 20 years. How long have you known him? Why would he do this to me for you? Do what to you? I have no idea. He was impossible to reason with, clearly on the verge of a breakdown. I knew if I didn't get out of the car, I was dead. I started banging on the door. After just a couple of hits, the man in the black shirt restrained me, and I couldn't move. The entire street seemed empty, except for us. Empty. No one could save me. Julian just watched me quietly. Desperate? That's how desperate I felt when Ken was teaching me a lesson. Then he gave a cold command, drive. 2 words, a death sentence. I slumped back into my seat and closed my eyes. But the car didn't move. Julian yelled at the driver. Drive. Are you deaf? The driver replied calmly, not everyone's here yet. What do you mean, not everyone? Just as he finished speaking, the car door opened. Ken stepped into the car and sat down next to me. Now we're all here. Julian's face went pale. He screamed at the man in the black shirt, what are you waiting for? The man quickly dropped the knife he was holding. Boss, I made sure to miss the battery. I practiced it like a dozen times. Julian stared, his eyes wide with disbelief. You fucking betrayed me. So what? The man grinned and patted my arm. Didn't tie you too tight, did I? I was going easy on you. Ken shot him a look, and he immediately pulled his hand back and shrank into the corner, not daring to make another sound. Now it was Julian who was frantically trying to open the car door. Of course, it wouldn't open. Ken leisurely lifted his leg and kicked the back of the passenger seat hard. Julian, I gave you a way out. The second time Ken had a falling out with his family, it was to break off the engagement. As compensation, he even flew abroad to clean up some of the Julian family's old messes. That's when he also discovered that the kidnapping years ago was orchestrated by Julian's own grandfather. He sacrificed one person to save his crumbling family. Out of respect for their years of friendship, Ken chose to forgive him as long as Julian gave up his fantasies. They could have remained good friends. Unfortunately, Julian wasn't satisfied with that. He tried to lure me to a club to completely ruin me. Even after Ken taught him a harsh lesson, he still wouldn't give up. So you knew I was going to run all along? My legs were still trembling with fear. Ken placed me on the bed and snorted. When you transferred all the money I gave you to your sister, I was naive enough to think you were finally accepting me. Ha, but then you immediately started plotting to leave me. You've lied to me so many times. I'm immune to it now. Leo, you were acting so strange tonight. Did you really think I was that stupid? Seeing him slowly unbuttoning his cuffs, I swallowed hard. Haha, well, all's well that ends well. Let's just go to sleep. Ken leaned over me, gripping my chin. Nothing else to say to me? I knew it. Tonight wasn't over. Before Julian was dragged away, he screamed, "If my flight hadn't been delayed that day, I would have been the one sleeping with you. It never would have been your turn." Ken had been ready to devour me right there in the car. Leo, I used to think I just had a wet dream all night on my birthday. A searing kiss landed on my lips. Now, I'm gonna find out for myself if that was really a dream. I whimpered, "Ken, you're an animal." He laughed. "Yes, I am.